This week on the Communicators, a roundtable discussion looking at the proposed offer by Microsoft to purchase Yahoo. Our guests are Jeff Chester of the Center for Digital Democracy and Cord Blomquist, the Technology Policy Analyst for the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
Well, the potential buyout of Yahoo by Microsoft has attracted a lot of attention from Congress, from federal agencies, consumer advocates, and by the media. That's our topic this week on the Communicators. Amy Schatz is a telecommunications reporter with the Wall Street Journal. Amy Schatz, what is the potential outcome of this merger buyout?
Well, the outcome is that you could see a merger between Microsoft and Yahoo. The fact that Microsoft essentially put Yahoo in play means that, the likelihood that there's going to be some kind of combination or some kind of massive event with Yahoo really it expands dramatically. This really began just a week ago at the end of January when Microsoft launched a surprise $44 billion bid, which was $31 a share for Yahoo. And, it became pretty clear right away that Yahoo wasn't particularly excited about this idea of being acquired by Microsoft and has been looking for a white knight ever since. So there's a lot of implications about this for the search market, for online advertising. There's also likely to be a lot of interest in Washington to see what kind of antitrust issues this deal would bring about. Even before there is an actual deal, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have been talking about potential hearings. The Justice Department has already talked about how it wants to take charge of the review, not the FTC. So there's an enormous number of things that are in play right now.
What are some of the potential antitrust issues?
Well, part of it is just this idea of having this kind of combination with search and with online advertising. Microsoft has not necessarily been, the leader in this space, but on the other hand, no one sort of has any doubt about their ability to come in and be very competitive in a market. I mean, last year, for U.S. online advertising overall, Google had essentially about a 28% share of the market versus Yahoo, which had about 15, and Microsoft had about 6.5. In terms of just the search market, Google had more than half the searches in December. If you looked at a Yahoo and Microsoft combined, they had maybe 31%. So, while this deal is going to obviously have a lot of scrutiny from regulators and from lawmakers, it's not necessarily something that can't happen.
Is this a deal that could happen quickly?
That's probably not going to happen, but I guess we'll see on that. The first step to actually having a deal is actually having signed paper between the two companies, and in fact, we don't have that yet. Yahoo's board has got to evaluate the Microsoft deal. In fact, they're supposed to be doing that on Friday, and we'll see how that comes about. Until you actually have a deal, you can't have regulatory scrutiny, and there's no doubt there's going to be an enormous amount of that.
And so do you think the presidential election will also affect the potential of this happening?
Yeah, having this happen during an election cycle is particularly problematic, I think, for the companies. And there's a reason why they're trying to get this done, I think, really as fast as they can, simply because you don't necessarily want to have your deal still you want to have it basically near the final stages before you might possibly see a change at the White House and to control to the Democrats, having Democrats at the Department of Justice. The Bush administration, generally speaking, has been pretty favorable towards large deals. Justice has approved most of them, I think, in fact, all of them. So, if you're Microsoft, you'd really like to see this go through pretty fast.
And what kind of opposition is Google raising? And is Google the only big company raising opposition at this point?
Well, Google's the only one who's actually made it known so far. Just 2 days after Microsoft actually delivered their unsolicited bid to Yahoo on a Saturday, a senior vice president at Google posted something on the Google blog where he basically trashed the whole deal and said it was raised significant concerns. And Google is going to be, it's likely that they're going to be sort of leading the charge to fight this deal. There's going to be other companies too. Advertisers don't necessarily want to see this kind of consolidation in the market. But Google has been very, very open about their opposition to this deal.
Amy Schatz, what will you be watching for in the next couple of weeks when it comes to Washington, federal agencies, Congress?
Well, we're going to be looking at, which agency actually gets the deal. We think Justice will probably get it. We're going to be looking at what kind of, what sort of issues are raised on Capitol Hill by lawmakers. We're going to be looking at just some of just watching and seeing and waiting for them to actually lay out their proposal and lay out why, for Microsoft, why this doesn't raise anti-competitive concerns.
Amy Schatz, telecommunications reporter with the Wall Street Journal, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Cord Blomquist, Competitive Enterprise Institute, do you have anti-competitive, antitrust concerns about this potential buyout?
I don't think there's any reason to really have concerns in this market. The internet marketplace has been so dynamic. When Microsoft was first undergoing its antitrust problems with the FTC, that was when Google was just getting off the ground. They were just seeking investors then. We've seen a company like Facebook go from a dorm room project to a company that's worth as much as Ford Motor Company in just a few years. So I think this market's incredibly competitive, and Microsoft and Yahoo getting together is probably one of the best ways that we can see downward pressure put on Google's prices and see real competition in the online sphere.
Jeff Chester, do you share that viewpoint?
I think this raises serious anti-competitive issues, just as we've seen consolidation in broadcast radio, broadcast television, cable television, and newspapers. And we've been concerned about the declining ability of the news media to perform given this consolidation. We're seeing unprecedented consolidation now in the online market as well. You have Google dominating the key source of income for online advertising and for online content. Microsoft is a distant second, as is Yahoo. What we are going to end up with, I fear, is something that's called a duopoly, two digital global giants who will be able to influence the shape of the digital media for decades to come. Now, part of the problem that's compounded here is that the U.S. Federal Trade Commission approved in December the merger of Google and this other giant firm, DoubleClick, without any safeguards or restrictions, further cementing its leadership position and, in a way, forcing Microsoft to attempt this deal, because right now Google dominates the online advertising business and will for many, many years to come.
Well, what if somebody didn't try to take on Google? Then wouldn't it be a monopoly?
Well, look, there's two sets of issues that we have to look at. First place, I think there are profound issues and questions here. The whole media system is undergoing a very significant transformation. Anybody who has a teenager recognizes that the media is evolving. We're getting it from cell phones and mobile devices and broadband video. So what the media system ends up looking like, whether or not it serves democracy, news, and competition, will, in my view, depend upon what happens to the online advertising market, because that's the key source of revenue for all of content moving forward. You have to look at the competition issues. Will there be a competitive market in online advertising that supports online publishing? But you also have to look at the privacy issues, because ultimately what's being combined here are data sets about you and me, highly detailed profiles that really allow a Google or a Microsoft or a Yahoo to know exactly what our interests are, where we are in the internet, where we are on our cell phones, and then target us with powerful advertisements. So you have to look at those two sets of issues.
And that's part of the privacy issues. But when it comes to the business model here, Cord Blomquist, did you hear anything that Jeff Chester said that you'd like to respond to?
Well, I think that Jeff raises some valid points, but I would take a different interpretation of those. I'd say that Google is empowering lots of new people to come into the content industry. Blogs were something that didn't exist a decade ago. We have YouTube now. There's all sorts of online video, online content sites that are providing people all sorts of new outlets for things. There's things from very specialized media sources, things concentrating on very niche issues, but we also see new online newspapers coming in. The Huffington Post didn't exist a few years ago. We didn't see something like Talking Points Memo. These are new outlets for new voices.
But can I say something? You know, what I fear is, just as with early radio in America and early television and early cable, when the promise of the medium seemed unlimited and the business marketplace had not developed its own rules, once the market matured, all of that early promise, all that democracy, non-commercial programming, that largely disappeared, C-SPAN being sort of one of the last remaining channels on cable that reflected that initial promise. I suggest to you very quickly in this internet era, literally almost 10 years after the internet became a popular medium in the United States, we are quickly down likely to 2 companies in charge of online advertising. And Google itself has bought YouTube. Google itself has bought the key advertising network that supports blogs, etc. This consolidation will have an impact and will shape the future of content. So on the one hand, it's true, it's a diverse medium, and it will likely always be that way. But what content dominates? What really gets people's attention? And will there be support for news and public affairs at a time when the existing media is very vulnerable and undergoing a transformation is a question.
Well, Jeff, I would share that concern if I thought that the market was a static thing, but I think this market is so dynamic that saying that Google is putting a lock on something is like saying that Google's going to hold on to Jell-O. It's going to slip through its fingers. Steve Ballmer is interested in buying Yahoo, not because he thinks that this market is a set market. He thinks it's going to double in the next 2 years. And we see not only we see growing markets not only here in online advertising, but there's 100 million people online in China. That's a country of 1.1 billion people. The same goes for places like India. These markets are growing. So this addresses the privacy concerns as well. Either Microsoft and Yahoo grow their user base and have more private information there that I think they'll keep private because they have every financial reason to keep it private. If that information were to get out, they would be punished in the marketplace, unlike something like the Department of Commerce that's let out thousands of laptops, or the Department of Veterans Affairs, who release Social Security numbers out to the public. They don't get punished in the marketplace. An undersecretary resigns, an apology is issued, but there's no punishment for these things when government controls them.
Do you think, though, Cord Blomquist, that there should be any restriction on this information, that there should be legislation of some type to restrict the privacy issues?
I don't think that legislation would solve for anything that the market isn't already solving for. Now, there have been questions raised about, well, what if data is leaked and companies don't say anything about it? We already have a legal system that accounts for that. There would be all sorts of civil liability issues with these companies. They'd be liable for billions of dollars in losses. So I think that the market would punish them accordingly. I mean, I'm not saying unrestricted capitalism without the court stepping in when a misdeed is done, but laws would just be a redundant issue.
But you're misreading the purpose of all that data collection in my perspective. Look, what the Googles and the Yahoos and the other advertisers, but principally these 2 giants, want is they are collecting all this information about you. It's not that they're going to leak it or give it to somebody else. They know as much about you as you may know yourself. They know exactly what content you like and don't like. They know where your mouse hovers over a particular word on a page. They know the broadband videos. They know where you are in the street through mobile technology. They're able to take all this information and then use it on behalf of advertisers to get you to behave. It's called behavioral targeting in some way or another, depending upon who's paying them. We need national laws that say the following: no data is collected from individuals without their permission and consent. What Google and Yahoo and Microsoft don't want to give the American people is control over their own data. Data is the new digital gold. That's the currency. That's why Microsoft is trying to buy Yahoo. That's why Google bought DoubleClick. It's about merging data sets so you have enough information about individual consumers and you have the scale to reach them throughout the digital universe. Let's give individuals control of their data, and if they decide to let a Google or Microsoft or anybody use it, that's fine, but there need to be safeguards.
Well, I wonder what the actual harm would come to consumers from giving this information over to Google and Microsoft. This has never been clearly illustrated to me.
Can I give you an example? And we did a report, and if your viewers and listeners want to go to digitalads.org, here's an example of a report we did last spring with the Berkeley Media Studies Group. It looks at the obesity crisis in America, and it looks at how the fast food and beverage companies are using all the information about that they have on young people to get them through their cell phone, through instant messaging, through broadband video, to get them to eat, fast food and junk food, and we have an obesity crisis. This is the most powerful media system ever created by humans. It's personalized, it's virtual, it's interactive, and it's going to be ubiquitous. We're always going to be connected. Do you want anyone, a Google, a Microsoft, a Republican or a Democratic Party, or understanding so much about you and being able to use multimedia that they can in fact work on your unconscious mind, which is part of what they're doing, to get you to behave in ways that they desire?
Well, I think Jeff doesn't give enough credit to the average American to make choices for themselves, and I think that Microsoft and Google, sure, they're targeting products that they think that you want to buy, but that's actually a really great service for some things. I mean, if I'm interested in a new cell phone and I've been emailing someone about this, it's not as though someone at Google reads this, but a machine looks at that email and it puts up maybe a new Nokia phone ad. It puts up an ad for the iPhone. It does things to direct consumers to things that they actually want. Now, Jeff wants you to believe that people don't have decision-making capabilities over this, that as though if you see enough ads for Oreos targeted at you during YouTube videos that you're going to go buy them. I think people are more informed now. If people want to solve their obesity problem, they have more resources online thanks to Google and Yahoo. So I think we really need to put more faith in the consumer and less faith in government.
You quoted Blomquist on the business model angle. Is Yahoo in trouble?
Yahoo's in trouble, but I don't think people realize how in trouble Microsoft is. And I think 44 billion reasons are out there now to show just how in trouble Microsoft is. There's a lot of challenges to their core business now. Linux is taking over more market share, especially in the server space. We've seen a big resurgence from Apple, but the other core business that Microsoft has is its Office suite. We see products like Think Free out there. There's a new startup, Zoho, which offers really great online office systems. But Google itself is offering Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, Google Presentations. And for people who don't want to spend $300 on an Office suite from Microsoft, they're going with these cheaper products. I mean, it's hard to compete with free.
So what's the benefit to Microsoft of Yahoo?
Well, I think Microsoft is really looking at the long term. A lot of people haven't given Steve Ballmer the credit that he deserves for looking out 10 or 15 years ahead and seeing that Microsoft's Office line is going to dry up, that revenue stream is going to disappear. So they're going after Yahoo so that they can integrate these online services, and instead of selling people software in a box you install via CD-ROM, it'll be visiting a web page that gives you the same functionality as that Office suite.
It's a race to gather as many eyeballs and data sets as possible. Microsoft is and also ran when it comes to Google. They're desperate to compete. They understand that in the future, their dominant revenue base may be online advertising. This issue about online advertising deserves much debate because it will determine, as I said, the future of our media system. But Yahoo brings them users. It brings the ability to further data mine and target consumers.
Well, Jeff Chester, Center for Digital Democracy, if Yahoo does not have a white knight and it goes out of business...
No, Yahoo's in terrible trouble, which shows you that Google is dominating, and it's why the Federal Trade Commission should have imposed some safeguards in December that allowed for competition to survive in this digital marketplace. The fact that you have one company dominating the online advertising business, particularly search, in the United States and in Europe, should be quite alarming, and yet only one single Federal Trade Commissioner, Pamela Harbour, voted for safeguards. Yes, Yahoo's in serious trouble. It's because of this consolidation. It really begs the question for policymakers, for Congress, and for antitrust regulators. There's a crisis right now in online advertising. Are we going to do something to promote competition?
What's the crisis in online advertising?
Well, the crisis, I think, from Jeff's perspective, is that Google is so dominant. And I don't think it's bad that Google's a titan. I think that capitalism can raise systems up to new heights. I don't see why we shouldn't have a clash of the titans between a united Microsoft, Yahoo, and a Google. What we should look at is not that these people are closing out competition, but they're providing new opportunities for new content creators to get online. We should look at Google and a Microsoft Yahoo as platforms, just as Windows was a platform for thousands of software creators to create new titles to put out products to consumers. Google and Yahoo are a new platform that raise capitalism to a whole new level. I don't think we should be regulating markets. We should be letting them loose.
Well, gentlemen, I want to get your response to David Drummond, Senior Vice President of Google, what he said in a statement released after this. While the Internet rewards competitive innovation, Microsoft has frequently sought to establish proprietary monopolies and then leverage its dominance into new adjacent markets. Could the acquisition of Yahoo allow Microsoft, despite its legacy of serious legal and regulatory offenses, to extend unfair practices from browsers and operating systems to the Internet?
Well, I think Microsoft would have a very hard time trying to do something like that, trying to leverage any of their operating system power over to the Internet. When they were involved with Netscape in the Explorer wars, or rather the browser wars of the 1990s, there were arguments made that they would leverage that to control more of the online market space. But even when Google challenged them to move MSN search as their default search off of Internet Explorer, the FTC decided against that. Microsoft continues to make MSN the default search, and yet Google still dominates in that marketplace. So I think Microsoft, try as it may, to use Internet Explorer, to use Windows to direct people to its online properties has not been successful.
Google is being very disingenuous here. It should have said, by the way, we're the dominant company. You know, the reason that Microsoft is trying to buy Yahoo is that they are lagging, our unbeatable share. And not once has Google really admitted there's a privacy problem here. They're buying all these companies so they can control more data, but they haven't really come out for a real privacy policy. I think the tragedy is that it's not real competition. We're seeing the emergence of two global digital gatekeepers that will have tremendous power to shape the future of the content market, and that the small players are going to be whipped to and fro by the whims of these two giants.
Does that bring up our old friend net neutrality?
Yes and no, because, and I've been a supporter of network neutrality, an open pipeline is critical, yet what flows over that pipeline will be determined by and large by who controls the market for the publishing of online content, who dominates the business model. That's online advertising. So you can have an open pipeline, but the only one with any resources may be the Googles and the Microsofts and the content they favor.
I think net neutrality has the same problems that this sort of antitrust talk has. It ignores the fact that these pipes cost a lot of money, and that network management has been with us as long as networks have been with us. These companies need to be able to deliver quality of service to their customers. Net neutrality would prevent people from intelligently managing networks to give some things priorities over others. And net neutrality has been something that's been heavily lobbied for by the very people that we're talking about right now, the Microsofts, the Googles of the world, because they see net neutrality as a way for them to free ride on what companies like Comcast, Verizon, AT&T are doing, which is laying out hundreds of millions of dollars a year in investment into broadband nationwide. So I think net neutrality is another mistake, just like this sort of resistance to consolidation in the content market.
But the decisions we make now will have a far-reaching impact on our future generations and the quality of our democracy and our economy. We want to have an open system. We want to have a competitive system. We shouldn't allow a handful of giants, whether they're cable, telephone, or frankly, internet marketers, have so much control they can shape the future of the internet and digital media. There's much more at stake, which is why Congress and the antitrust regulators and a new administration really needs to come to grips with this new digital economy and implement the safeguards necessary.
Gentlemen, we've also mentioned a couple times global economy and Europe. How does this affect the EU especially, because of all the regulations that they have put into place?
Well, the EU has taken upon itself the role of being the antitrust cop of the world now. And they want to impose stricter regulations. Google DoubleClick is still facing EU regulators. So Jeff need not lose hope. We still may have the EU to obstruct this deal.
How can the EU obstruct a deal between two American companies?
Well, they both have a presence in Europe. So they're both still under that regulatory regime.
And it's a global, I think it's important for Americans to recognize, we have created a global marketplace, and it's true our companies are dominating by and large, but the Internet's a network of networks around the world, And for a company like Google, it's as important what they do in China, for example, and Germany as what they do in North America. And because Google has such a significant market share of the European search market, actually higher than it has in the United States, there's room for the European Union to make policy. And of course, the European Commission has been aggressively going after Microsoft for its own anti-monopoly behavior.
Jeff Chester, the FTC versus the Department of Justice. Why does it matter, and who would you like to see look at this deal?
Well, I understand the Department of Justice has received approval to review.
Does that please you?
The potential, not really. It's in a very internal process of the Department of Justice versus the Federal Trade Commission, where there are 5 commissioners and 5 sort of distinct viewpoints, and I believe it's fairer for consumers. You can go to the staff, you can go to each of the 5 commissioners. They have different political perspectives, and out of that perhaps comes a better consensus for consumers and competitors.
Same question.
Well, I think when we look at the history of antitrust and these concerns in the marketplace, we look at Microsoft with its media player. We look at Microsoft with Internet Explorer. As these have moved through antitrust proceedings, we've seen the Flash player online, what YouTube uses, become a dominant media player. Microsoft's media player is losing market share all the time. The things that the EU have done against Microsoft have been slow. Eventually a decision comes down in those proceedings, but the market moves on. And the same thing has happened with the EU attacking Apple for its supposed monopoly on online music. Now we see Amazon, Yahoo offering DRM-free music. I think that all these antitrust proceedings are misguided, and the market just moves too quickly for us to really assume that it's static and that we need the government to come in and control things.
But what the Federal Trade Commissioner Pamela Harbour said in her dissent on the Google DoubleClick deal, and what's now, I understand, being debated in Europe, is this, that these new media mergers have to transcend something than just a narrow marketplace focus. It is about the future of media diversity. It is about the future of privacy and data collection. So the Europeans are trying to create a more holistic examination of these deals, and frankly, it should send a message to the U.S. antitrust folks to do something similar.
Jeff Chester, what is the Center for Digital Democracy?
We're a nonprofit group that works on behalf of consumers to represent their interests on digital communications issues here in Washington.
And Cord Blomquist, Competitive Enterprise Institute?
The Competitive Enterprise Institute is a nonprofit think tank here in Washington, and we believe that consumers empowered in a free marketplace will make better decisions than government bureaucrats or politicians.
Gentlemen, thank you both for helping us to better understand this potential buyout of Yahoo by Microsoft.
Thank you.